Have you noticed? Supermarkets are changing. Oh yes, not like the old days when you used to go into the grocery store, open the old stiff door. Oh, there we go. Ka-ding! Oh, little bell on the top there ringing. Man in brown overalls would come out. Good afternoon. Can I help you, sir? Oh, yes, please. I'll have a pound of potatoes, please. A few carrots. How are your prunes looking today? Oh, are they? I'll leave them. I'll tell you what, I'll have a tin of corned beef instead. Thanks ever so much. And it was as simple as that. Then, of course, you had the bigger supermarkets with the electric doors. Oh, looks just like being on Star Trek. How amazing. And you could wander around and fill up your basket with all this highly processed stuff and the big pictures and glaring images on boxes and TV dinners and all of that. Oh, lovely. And then you'd line up and wait for somebody on the till who was able to punch in the numbers, or when it got really fancy, they would have those zappers, wouldn't they? And just pick up the item, zipping. Oh, there you go. Has that done it? Yeah, no, that's got the price and everything. Oh, how clever. Well, now it's all changed. I saw this report on GB News of some bloke going into, I think it was an Audi store, if I remember rightly, one of his local Audis. I don't know where it is in the country. It could be up in London or certainly in one of the major cities anyway. And he couldn't get in because he came in the door and, oh, it was like getting onto the bridge of Star Trek. There was all these panels and you had to have a mobile phone with the appropriate app before you could get through the barrier. A bit like being at a tube station in many ways with an Oyster card. You couldn't get in and you were asked to download the appropriate app, and you had to have space on your phone, of course, and battery life and all of those things before you could get into the store. And then in the store there would be cameras and it would be watching everything you do, and you could pick things up and you could scan them with your thing and the camera would make sure you hadn't actually shoved them in your pocket and all of that. This is the new digital way of shopping. Oh, it sounds absolutely amazing, doesn't it? Unless, of course, you haven't got your mobile phone with you because you're slightly frightened of EMF, those electrical magnetic fields, which can damage the blood in your hand and terminate your brain and all those sort of things. If you're slightly worried about that, or if you want to pay in cash, of course, you can't actually get into the store. If you're okay with perhaps the future of central bank digital currencies, then this is the thing for you. If you don't mind having your social score, if whatever you put on Facebook last week or a rude comment on Twitter or something is there to haunt you and suddenly punish you because somebody somewhere doesn't like the fact that you said their thing about you, and now you can't actually either get into the store or you are not allowed to buy it because your central bank digital currency says no, then this is the future to embrace. It is a bit worrying. Now, even at my store near me, just an ordinary and everyday big named brand store, supermarket store, I went in there, haven't been in there for weeks actually, because I now go to farm shops and I source my food elsewhere. I tend not to like the heavily processed, evil, poisonous food that they sell in these places, and I'm very much worried about the vegetables and the lack of mineral content that they have in these superstores, which of course the prices are reasonably cheap, although they have been creeping up recently. And the chemicals in them have certainly increased, and you never know quite what you're buying, whether it's full of all sorts of weird poisons or indeed mealworms and funny sort of death watch beetle. Anyway, I did have to go in there, and I went in there and there was all these surveillance cameras, hundreds of them all over the place, and it was like watching me being in a film like Big Brother with all of that. And at the tills I noticed there were little monitor screens and you could see yourself like watching in the mirror, only it was watching you, taking your biometrics and things like that. And I think I made a video about that only the other day. But this is the change that's being rolled in. This electronic digital age is coming in. Now, for the likes of me at my sort of senior age, and I've been around for a little bit since the 1960s, so you can work out the sort of age group that I'm in, This is intolerable because I still remember the analogue way. I remember the nice shopkeeper. I remember those independent stores. You could go from one to the other. But of course, convenience has come in and people have got lazy and people don't want to go and park in one place and wander down the high street and have bags of food. They want to be able to go to one shop and do one drop in one go, don't they? With a big trolley and just fill up as cheaply as they possibly can all this highly processed poisonous food that is damaging them and dumbing them down and killing off their children and giving them premature death and all sorts of other diseases that they can go to the big pharma and have lots of pills and spend hours at the GP or trying to get to the GP or using their new digital phones to talk to the doctor who they've never actually met in real life and taking pills that they have no notion of what's in them, even though we've gone through a very strange period 3 years ago in which people were mandated to have a certain product that's had a rather nefarious effect on a lot of people. But people just seem quite happy to embrace all that. Oh, I don't mind. You know, I'm only here on this earth for a very short while. And it seems that they're determined to make it shorter and shorter and more painful and more complex and more stressful and more worrying. But I don't mind. I don't really want to have a wholesome life in which I eat real vegetables and feel empowered and become sovereign, because people these days have been so dumbed down by the mainstream media and their dictators at the government telling them how benevolent, until the mask slips a bit, you know. Oh, parties? No, we didn't have any parties. What are you talking about? We do exactly as we tell everybody else to do. We abide by the laws, of course. Is the mask still up there? Yes, of course. People are so dumbed down that they're happily to go along with it. And I worry particularly about the youth, of course, because they're stuck there on these phones. They don't care about EMFs. They've no notion of what it does. Their brains haven't even managed to expand big enough to be worried about things in the world. Because let's face it, when you're 12 years old, you know everything. And all those old people are just old dinosaurs who know nothing. And that what they're talking about and their worries, goodness gracious, it's not going to affect me, because I can get a chip and put it into my head. And so if anything, as a human being, I'm sort of not really good enough anyway. But these wonderful chips and these marvellous supermarkets and these incredible apps and paying by my fingerprint, oh, it's going to be an amazing world. It doesn't have to be that way, and I'm very pleased to say that for those people who are actually sensible and using critical thought and have common sense and are awake and do know that this is actually part of a digital enslavement, that it is a dumbing down of humanity like nothing we've ever seen before, that there are plenty of people who are awake and are aware that these things are coming and that want no part of it. And I'm very thrilled that the grassroots movements are actually getting together now, and they're rising up. They're turning their back on these idiots in power, these authoritative figures who are pretending to be our parents and pretending to be benevolent and pretending to look after us, when really they're trying to extract every last piece of money and indeed soul out of our bodies. And these wonderful people at the grassroots movements are slowly rising up, not to attack and cause chaos for the government, but just to turn their backs and say, do you know what, you can do all this nonsense, but we're not partaking in it. We're going to ignore it. It's nothing to do with us. We're setting up a new society. And when that new society is set up, these poor people are stuck there with their phones and feeling a bit ill and a bit penniless and unable to leave their town and move around and all the rest of it, will start to look at these other people who seem to be a bit backward in their life because they don't embrace the technology in the same way that they do, as, oh, must look at this, sunrise over there, ignore that, call that dangerous. They may start to realise that actually the good and genuine people have set up something completely new and wonderful, and go, oh, actually, this does seem to be a bit like a prison. I'm not sure I want this. And I am sure they will start to make their way towards the light. And of course, those people there will welcome them with open arms. But have you noticed the supermarkets are changing? If you have, are you continuing to shop in them? Or are you, like a more sensible, critical thinking, intelligent person who stands up for their own rights and is an adult in the room, are you just saying, right, well, in that case, I won't bother. I won't bother. It's all very nice and gleaming and all of the rest of it. But there's no humans to interact with. There's no one to say, hello, how are you? What are the prunes like at the moment? There's no one to talk to and enjoy life. No, if you're one of those people who want to engage with humanity and have a wonderful life, then of course we don't have to engage with any of it. We can turn our backs and say, oh, all right then, I'll go elsewhere. And believe you me, there are going to be plenty of alternatives coming up very soon.